The van was a cramped cocoon of monitors and static, parked in a shadowed alley 2 blocks from Seokjin's front in Seoul's financial district. Jungkook sat at the comms console, his head set tight against his ears, his fingers gripping the controls as he relayed updates to Taehyung's team. The infiltration was underway, and the weight of his role, keeping the team connected, flagging threats, pressed heavily on his chest. Taehyung's voice from the garden, "You're the signal," echoed in his mind, a steady anchor amidst the chaos. But the fear of failure, of losing Taehyung, made his pulse race. "Team Alpha, you're clear on East Entry," Jungkook said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands, his eyes fixed on the surveillance feeds. Hoseok sat beside him, monitoring encrypted chatter, his calm presence a quiet reassurance. The screens showed Taehyung, Jimin, and 2 operatives moving like shadows through the building's service corridors, their movements precise, lethal. "Copy, Jian," Taehyung's voice crackled through the headset, low and focused, but with a warmth that sent a shiver through Jungkook. "Keep those eyes sharp," Jungkook swallowed, his heart skipping at the sound of Taehyung's voice. "Always," he replied, a small attempt at levity, but his focus snapped back as Hoseok flagged a signal. "Picking up chatter," Hoseok said, his voice urgent. "Yoongi's network, someone's onto us. They're mobilizing a response team, 8 to 10 minutes, Jungkook's stomach twisted, his fingers flying over the controls. "Alpha, you've got incoming, response team, 10 minutes out," he said, his voice tight but clear. "You need to move faster." "Understood," Jimin replied, his tone clipped. "We're at the server room." Planting the false intel now, Jungkook's eyes darted between feeds, his breath shallow as he watched Taehyung guard the door, his silhouette tense, a gun in hand, a stark reminder of the danger. The billionaire's promise, "no more holding back," felt like a distant dream in the face of this reality, but it fueled Jungkook's resolve. He couldn't fail, not now. "Jian, status on the perimeter," Taehyung's voice cut through, sharp but steady. Jungkook checked the external cams. "Clear for now, but Hoseok's got eyes on the response team, 8 minutes out," he said, his voice firm. "You've got a window, but it's tight." "Copy," Taehyung said, and Jungkook caught a flicker of pride in his tone. "Good work, Jian," the praise warmed Jungkook's chest, but a sudden alert on Hoseok's screen snapped his focus. "They're early," Hoseok hissed. "Response team's 5 minutes out, 3 vehicles, armed. We need to pull Alpha now." Jungkook's heart pounded, his fingers trembling as he relayed the update. "Alpha, response team's 5 minutes out, armed. You need to exfil now." "Almost done," Jimin replied, his voice strained. 30 seconds. Jungkook's eyes flicked to Taehyung's feed, watching him scan the corridor, his posture rigid. The seconds dragged, each one a weight on Jungkook's chest. "Alpha, you're out of time," he said, his voice urgent. "Move done," Jimin barked. X-filing now. The feeds showed the team sprinting through the corridors, but Hoseok's voice cut through, sharp. "They're here, 2 vehicles at the east exit." "Alpha, redirect to west," Jungkook relayed the order, his heart in his throat as the team pivoted, Taehyung taking point. Fire erupted on the audio feed, and Jungkook froze, his breath catching as Taehyung's voice came through, calm but tense. "Jian, west exit status." Jungkook scrambled, checking the cams. "West exit clear," But you've got hostiles closing from the north, he said, his voice shaking. Go now. The next minutes were a blur of static and shouts, Jungkook's world narrowing to the feeds as Taehyung's team fought their way out. When the screen showed them reaching the west exit, piling into a waiting SUV, Jungkook exhaled, his hands trembling. Alpha's clear, Hoshiyar confirmed, but Jungkook's relief was short-lived. Jian, Taehyung's voice came through, rough but alive. We're en route. Stay put, Jungkook nodded, though Taehyung couldn't see, his heart still racing. The van fell silent, the mission's success tempered by the close call. As they drove back to the estate, Jungkook's thoughts churned, Taehyung's voice, the weight of their bond. When the van reached the compound, Taehyung was waiting, his dark coat open, his hair damp with sweat, a fresh cut above his brow. Jungkook climbed out, his legs unsteady, and Taehyung crossed to him in 2 strides, pulling him into a fierce embrace, his arms tight, his breath hot against Jungkook's neck. You were incredible, Taehyung murmured, his voice raw, trembling with relief. You kept us alive out there. Jungkook clung to him, the warmth of Taehyung's body a lifeline, the scent of smoke and leather grounding him. You're okay, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion, his hands gripping Taehyung's shirt. I was so scared. Taehyung pulled back just enough to cup Jungkook's face, his eyes blazing with intensity, searching. Because of you, he said, his voice low, fervent. You're my strength, Jian. His thumb brushed Jungkook's cheek, lingering near his lips, and the air between them crackled, the tension from the near kiss reigniting. Taehyung leaned in, his lips hovering a breath away, but he stopped, his jaw clenching with restraint. Jungkook's heart pounded, his body aching for the kiss, but he saw the fear in Taehyung's eyes, the fear of crossing a line in the heat of danger. Soon, Jungkook whispered, his voice a plea, his hand resting on Taehyung's jaw, feeling the pulse beneath his skin. We'll have our time. Taehyung's eyes softened, a promise flickering in them. Soon, he echoed, his voice a vow, his hand tightening on Jungkook's face before falling away. Get inside. We need to regroup. This isn't over. As Jungkook followed him into the estate, Taehyung's hand brushed his, a quiet anchor in the chaos. The mission had succeeded, the false intel was planted, Seokjin's plans disrupted, but the threat remained. Yet, Taehyung's embrace, his words were a fire in Jungkook's chest, fueling his resolve. He was bound to this man, this fight, and he knew he'd face whatever came next for them. The security room was quieter now, the frenetic energy of the infiltration operation replaced by a heavy, reflective silence. Jungkook sat at the conference table, his headset discarded, his hands still trembling faintly from the adrenaline of the mission. The memory of Taehyung's desperate embrace in the alley, his raw "you were incredible," burned in his chest, a spark that both grounded and unnerved him. Across the table, Taehyung leaned against the wall, his dark eyes fixed on Jimin as the head of security delivered the debrief, his presence a steady force despite the fresh cut above his brow. Jimin tapped his tablet, pulling up a decrypted message intercepted during the operation. The false intel was planted successfully, he said, his voice steady but laced with caution. Seokjin's network took the bait, they're scrambling to verify it, which buys us time. But Minho's interrogation revealed something new. Seokjin's planning a direct move, likely targeting Jian at a public event next week. They want to expose the surrogacy in a way that forces Mr. Kim to step down from the board. Jungkook's stomach twisted, the weight of being a target settling heavier than ever. His role in Taehyung's legacy, carrying his heir, was supposed to be private, a contract to secure his family's future, but now it was a weapon in Seokjin's hands. He glanced at Taehyung, whose jaw clenched, a storm brewing behind his calm. "What kind of event?" Taehyung asked, his voice low, dangerous, his eyes flicking to Jungkook for a moment, protective and intense. Jimin hesitated, his gaze shifting to Jungkook. "A charity gala," he said. "High profile, lots of media. It's the perfect stage for a scandal. We can lock it down, increase security, but if Seokjin's desperate, he might still try something." Jungkook's heart raced, the idea of facing cameras and crowds under threat making his skin crawl. "So what do we do?" he asked, his voice steady despite the fear in his chest. "Cancel it? Or use it like we did the cafe?" Taehyung's eyes snapped to him, a mix of frustration and admiration flickering. "No," he said, his voice firm. "You're not playing bait again. We'll handle Seokjin before the gala. I won't let him near you." Jungkook leaned forward, his hands unclenching, his voice quiet but resolute. "You can't keep me out of this, Taehyung," he said, meeting the billionaire's gaze. "I'm already in it. If the gala's the move, let me help. We can control the narrative." Like Jimin said, the room went still, Jimin and the other operatives glancing between them, sensing the tension. Taehyung's fingers curled into a fist, his eyes searching Jungkook's face, a storm of protectiveness and trust warring within. "You're too stubborn for your own good," he said finally, his voice rough but tinged with reluctant pride. "We'll plan for the gala, but you stay in my sight." "No exceptions." Jungkook nodded, a small victory warming his chest, but the weight of the mission lingered. As the team dispersed to refine the plan, Taehyung gestured for Jungkook to stay, his expression unreadable but intense. The door closed, leaving them alone in the flickering light of the monitors. Taehyung crossed to Jungkook, stopping just close enough for his presence to feel overwhelming, his dark eyes searching. "You scared the hell out of me tonight," he said, his voice low, raw. "Hearing your voice on comms, knowing you were part of this. I hated it." Jungkook's breath hitched, Taehyung's vulnerability stripping away the billionaire's armor. He stood, closing the distance, his heart pounding. "I hated it too," he admitted, his voice soft, trembling. "Hearing, not knowing if you'd make it out. But I did it for you. For us." Taehyung's eyes darkened, a flicker of desire breaking through his restraint. He reached out, his hand cupping Jungkook's jaw, his thumb brushing over his lower lip in a gesture so intimate it stole Jungkook's breath. "You're going to ruin me," he murmured, his voice hoarse, strained with emotion. "Every time I try to keep you safe, you pull me in deeper." Jungkook leaned into the touch, his hands lifting to rest on Taehyung's chest, feeling the rapid beat of his heart. "Maybe I want to," he whispered, his eyes locked on Taehyung's, his voice trembling with longing. "Maybe I'm tired of fighting this." Taehyung's breath caught, his hand sliding to the back of Jungkook's neck, pulling him closer until their foreheads touched, their breaths mingling in the quiet. "You don't know what you're asking," he said, his voice raw, almost broken. "If I give in, if I let myself, there's no going back." Jungkook's heart raced, the air between them electric with unspoken need. "Then don't," he said softly, his voice a plea and a challenge. I'm here, Taehyung. I'm not running. For a moment, Taehyung was still, his eyes a storm of longing and fear. Then, slowly, he tilted his head, his lips brushing Jungkook's in a kiss so soft, so fleeting, it felt like a dream. It was barely a touch, a whisper of what could be, but it sent a fire through Jungkook's veins, his hands tightening on Taehyung's shirt. Taehyung pulled back, his eyes blazing with restraint, his voice hoarse. Not like this, he said, his hand lingering on Jungkook's neck. When this is over, when you're safe, I'll give you everything. I promise. Jungkook nodded, his throat tight, the brief kiss a spark that burned in his chest. I'm holding you to that, he said softly, his eyes searching Taehyung's, a vow of his own. Taehyung's lips curved, a faint, hopeful smile. Get some rest, he said, his tone reverting to command, but laced with warmth. We've got a gala to prepare for. As Jungkook left the security room, his heart still pounding, the ghost of Taehyung's kiss lingered, a promise of a future beyond the storm. Seokjin's threat loomed, the gala a looming battleground, but Jungkook felt stronger, bound to Taehyung by trust and a spark that was ready to ignite. He was ready to face the fight, for their legacy and for the man who was becoming his everything.